Hello friends, and today we are going to be doing a sketch, a watercolor sketch of a wonderful little place that is down the road from me called Boulders Beach. Well known for the African penguins that swim around there, for those that have visited. I'm going to be using a few of these aqua pens and my pen, do a bit of pen work and the rest in watercolor. The painting you see now is something I did on the spot at Boulders Beach, and I want to show you how I came to that result. So I'm just mixing up, I wet my palette a little bit and then mixing up some turquoise, some sap green and yellow ochre. I'm mixing these colors because I think this is sort of the colors I'm going to be using. But of course, wetting the page first is what one does in watercolor if you want it to flow really nicely and if you want the colors to blend together. So make sure that the area you put your paint in is really nice and wet. I have done a prior drawing. It's very pale. You should be able to just see the outlines because I don't want the pencil mark to be too dark. I've put down my turquoise and sort of decided I'm not going to use the sap green. I'm just going to use the yellow ochre because of course yellow and blue make green anyway. So that will blend on its own. And adding a touch of indigo at the back just to give it some color perspective. So lighter in the front, moving to slightly darker at the back and warmer in the front. And I've decided to add a few swatches of the different colors that I've used. This is great if you're doing it in your sketchbook like I am over here, and just so for future reference you can remember exactly what you've done. I have added a bit of ultramarine blue, so the top would be turquoise, then ultramarine blue, then indigo, and then the yellow ochre. So as my water is drying, I'm coming in with some thicker paint of the turquoise to start giving it a feeling of water, a feeling of swirling water, sort of moving up along the beach, just to give it the movement that I feel it needs. And of course my splattering. So make sure your brush is thoroughly soaked with the pigment and the paint, otherwise the splatters won't happen. And somebody once told me a good way to really splatter is to have a smoker's tap. So basically hold it like you would hold a cigarette. I don't smoke, but this was a good way of explaining. So hold it like you would probably hold a cigarette, and then as you tap hard on your brush, the splatters come off, and that prevents it from going all over the place. I have now come in with some pen work, and this is just, as you can see, pretty rough cross hatching. So going in one direction first, then the other direction. This pen should be waterproof, but I did try it a bit and it looks like it's running slightly, which is not a bad thing for this project, but I don't think I've let it dry properly. So I'm just continuing with my cross hatching boulder after boulder, and always remember that the one in front has to stand out, so your shadow area would be on the rock behind so that the front one stands out, as I am displaying over there. Just pretty rough. This is a rough sketch. It's an idea of where you were, a recording of a place that you've sat and looked at. You can see the two little penguins that I've sketched on the rock there, waiting to be filled in. And being left-handed isn't always easy. I sometimes smear over my paint and have to, get things stuck underneath my hand and then have to go back and clean it up afterwards. But that's all part of the fun. Deciding that it's not quite dark enough, putting in a bit darker, and I finished the area of the rocks. And as it wasn't quite dark enough, I've come in now with a slightly darker mixture. This was some burnt sienna, ultramarine blue, and alizarin crimson, just to give a slightly more shadow, darker area to make the rocks stand out. Not forgetting to add the little swatch at the top. And mixing it even darker. As I drop it into the wet area, it just flows nicely. Bit of splattering as well. The page is still slightly damp. And there you can see the marks that I managed to get from my left hand onto the paper. So what works really well is an old toothbrush, or I've used one of these toothbrushes you get on plain, and I just slightly scrub away the areas that might bother me and just dab it away with a paper towel. Don't do it too hard because it's going to lift some of the paper. This is a moleskin sketchbook, watercolor sketchbook, an A3, so quite a large size. And the paper isn't too thick. It's probably about 200 gram, but not too thick. Feeling that it needed a bit of a border, or the same as I did on my plein air sketch that I did on site. I like the fact that this border was around the painting. And here I come in with these aqua markers. I don't really use them regularly, but I thought I'd give them a nice try. I've got this lovely green color and the blue. And what you do is you put your marks down, and then you come over with a damp brush. And some of it spreads and some of it doesn't, but I quite like the effect because you still get the idea that it is drawn in a color, but it's not the sharp, hard color. So I'm actually pretty happy with what I had there. Just putting in some details on the penguins, as this is a place where they are protected. It's Boulders Beach in Cape Town, in Simonstown, and it's literally 5 kilometers from where I live. So a wonderful place to sit and sketch. I've decided I also want to put the headings in, so obviously on the swatches exactly what the colors were, and a bit of a block that I've drawn in on the right where my writing will go in. I did try initially with a thinner marker, and the one I'm using now, which is fine to write the details on the swatches, but it ended up being slightly too light for the writing. So I've come in with my calligraphy pen, my number 3, and it leaves a much bolder look. So the reason for the little box that I put in pencil first is just to keep this writing in one place so it doesn't become scattered or too skew or all over the place. You're keeping it contained, and some can be big and some can be small. It really doesn't matter. You can also do whatever font you like and whatever suits you at the end of the day. And don't forget to subscribe if you've enjoyed this channel, and I look forward to showing you something else very soon in the future. I hope you've enjoyed this, and you can always paint from a plein air sketch to a sketch in the studio. Have fun.